From the Oklahoman newsroom, it's time for Thunder Thursday. We are brought to you by Charleston's Restaurant. Be sure to go see them. Lots of good stuff there. Maybe even have it for your playoff watch party. Playoffs. It's time, everybody. We finally know where the Thunder's landed. We finally know who they're going to play. Hold on. I got to tell everybody who's here. I'm Jenny Carlson, Barry Trammell, Eric Horn. So much to talk about, though. Thunder in the 6th spot, which a week ago, I don't think we really thought was very possible for this team. They're playing the 3-seeded Portland Trailblazers. We definitely didn't see that one coming, folks.
Disclaimer. We had a staff meeting last week in which we discussed playoff ideas, special section, all that. Extensively went into the Rockets, extensively went into the Warriors, extensively went into the Nuggets. Did not mention the Trailblazers of Portland, Oregon.
Disclaimer. The Thunder needs to send the LA Clippers a fruit basket. Second of all, when the LA Clippers beat, or when forget that. I told a bad joke. They need to send the Lakers a fruit basket. When the Lakers beat the Thunder, I'm looking at the wrong camera.
Friday night.
When the Lakers beat the Thunder, or not the Thunder, the Lakers beat the Clippers. I'm having the worst video ever right now. When the Lakers beat the Clippers, I texted Barry Trammell in the dark of the night as if, an important figure in history had died, like the Pope or something. And I was like, Barry, this is entirely possible. The Thunder could get the 6. And I wake up the next morning and Barry's like, you're absolutely right. You're right. The Thunder has a chance at the 6. Even I didn't believe it. It was improbable. A lot of things had to fall into place. And with last night's drama, they did. Somehow they did.
Some way. That was a lot of drama, a lot going on. Portland trying to lose somehow wins a game. Lots to talk about here, guys. But this matchup with Portland is now front and center. If this matchup happens a year ago, guys, everybody's like, well, this is going downhill. Thunder could not beat the Blazers. Now, the Blazers can't beat the Thunder. They swept this series. This matchup, playoff matchups, every one of them is going to be difficult. But let's talk about what we like about this matchup. Barry, what do you like most about this matchup with the Blazers?
Forgive the inhumanity, but Nurkic is not playing. That's what I like about it. The Portland center, a very good player. He's out for the year. The Blazers are now going to be using a 3-headed monster at center of Zach Collins, Myers Leonard, and old pal Enes Kanter. Yeah. Party at Steven Adams' house. So Thunder has a big edge in the paint now in the interior. Yeah. And the Thunder's done a pretty good job. Terrence Ferguson's done a really good job this year guarding C.J. McCollum. And if Lillard and McCollum, Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum are not on for the Blazers, they're very hard-pressed to win ball games.
Yeah, it's been an interesting turn of events for Portland, Eric. Losing their big man, but yet still finding a way to get that 3, something that, when he goes down, I'm not sure anybody's thinking is possible. And yet the Thunder does have some pretty advantageous matchups here. What do you like best?
Well, I like the notion that I don't think that there's anybody in particular defensively that can stop Russell Westbrook or Paul George. Now, remains to be seen if Paul George is going to be 100% or is going to be anything close to it. I don't think that's going to be the case. He hasn't been that way since the All-Star break, and he didn't play in the last game for the Thunder against Milwaukee. But look, Russell Westbrook has a history of success against the Portland Trailblazers, if not some strange games against them. There's no reason why Russell Westbrook can't be successful. There's no reason why he won't be able to set guys up for quality shots the way he has post All-Star break. It's gotten a little bit lost within the triple-double madness, the 2020, but Russell Westbrook is arguably playing some of the best ball of the season right now as the Thunder goes into the playoffs. And that's what you needed from this team. Not so much the wins, but the execution. And the Thunder's executed much better with their offense in the past week and a half. The Thunder's coming off of a game where they set a record for assists, albeit against a Bucks team that didn't look very concerned with playing defense, and they were playing a zone most of the game. But still, the Thunder was moving the ball regardless of what kind of defense they were faced with. That starts with Russell Westbrook. I think that bodes well for them going into a playoff series because Russell Westbrook is playing the way that the Thunder envisioned him playing, setting guys up for shots, being a distributor. that we all know he can be.
Yeah, pretty clearly, the Thunder has a great chance to have the best player on the court at any given time with Westbrook playing this way. As if on cue, by the way, guys, one of the new Oklahoma City streetcars goes by our window just a second ago with Dennis Schroeder and the NBA playoffs plastered on the side. You know it's time. It's that time of year. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Barry, you mentioned Terrence Ferguson and C.J. McCollum. Terrence Ferguson, not a factor a year ago at this time. Didn't play hardly at all in the playoffs. Now he's a guy that could really affect this, and it looks like he's at least got some of C.J. McCollum figured out.
Well, he's become a very good defender at the age of 20. He's going to get even better. I think Terrence Ferguson's going to be a really good player in the league, but he can play some good defense, has the energy to and the length to bother somebody like C.J. McCollum. And he's not a liability on offense in most games anymore. You know, he's making some shots and being more active. So Terrence Ferguson's a nice addition to this playoff rotation compared to a year ago when the Thunder was older. Last year they're starting Carmelo Anthony and Corey Brewer. This year it's Terrence Ferguson and Jeremy Grant. A lot younger, a lot springier, a lot more athletic. So I like this. I like the roster of this starting lineup. Now we'll see if they play. They haven't always played great, but you sort of like the matchup from the Thunder standpoint. And frankly, the whole league is just going crazy over the Thunder's chances. So maybe we've been too critical of some of their flaws.
No, we haven't.
You don't think familiarity breeds contempt?
No.
Not a little bit of that going on?
No, and I don't even think it's contempt. I think it's realism.
It's I wasn't making stuff up. I'm just grabbing an old phrase.
It's not contempt. It's not even an old phrase. I just think that we've seen this team. We've seen this team for the past 3 years post Kevin Durant. It's an inefficient offensive team. It's a team that relies heavily on Russell Westbrook to create at the point of attack. And it's a team that, when put in playoff series, as we saw with Utah, where they were the presumed favorite last year, you had a game where Russell Westbrook got into a personal vendetta with Ricky Rubio, fouled a ton, that potentially lost him a game. You had a game where the Thunder had to rally from 25 points down in order to come back and even extend the series to an additional game. Now, granted, Carmelo Anthony was involved in that game. Jeremy Grant's in this game. Jeremy Grant's in this series, and Jeremy Grant is one of the most improved players in the NBA this season. Yeah. But Thunder goes on the road. Russell Westbrook takes 19 threes. Paul George plays poorly, and then you're out in 6 games. So we still don't know, and we still, I don't think, should put a full all chips in trust factor on this Thunder team coming through, particularly when they don't have home court advantage against Portland. Everything points to this team having the advantage in the series because of the regular season success, because of having Steven Adams, because of Nurkic not being available for Portland. But it's very, I would say, please don't bet on the Thunder. If you have a gambling addiction, please don't involve the Thunder in any parlays or three-way things or any gambling kind of nonsense, because you're going to end up disappointed. You're going to end up with an ulcer, and it's going to be an issue. Just stay away from the Thunder at all costs. But yes, this is a team that should be invested in with much trepidation.
We'll talk more about the guards here in just a second, and I want to talk about Paul George also. Eric, you mentioned his health. We'll talk about that in a second. But while this series, there'll be a lot of talk about the guards, and for good reason. All series are probably that way with this being a guard league. But what Barry said at the start, Eric, Steven Adams having the advantage in this series, which if you'd have said this was the matchup at the beginning of the year, you would not have expected Steven Adams to be the dominant center. How much does he have to affect the games and affect this series, Eric, in your mind, considering the matchup that he'll see at that center position?
He's got to dominate. And it's not even just with his point production, but he's got to control the boards. He's got to be able to contain Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum in pick and roll coverage, because we know the Thunder likes to play their centers up high. It even might be a scheme change, because you're not going to have a guy like Nurkic that's going to be a threat to roll they might be even more aggressive in putting Steven Adams up there on those guards because Damian Lillard, you're going to want him to get the ball out of his hands. You're going to want him to get the ball to a Zach Collins or a Myers Leonard. But Steven Adams has got to be great, and that's why his health is so important too. He's got to finish better around the rim, regardless of whether he's healthy or not. He's got to be a guy who gets some easy buckets because there's not going to be a lot of resistance in there. He's got an offensive rebound at the rate he has in the past week or so. The Thunder's been dominant on the offensive glass in the 5-game winning streak. So this is an opportunity for Steven Adams to really make a mark on this series because Nurkic has given him trouble in the past, and this year it finally seems like Steven Adams has kind of closed that ground in that matchup. There's no ground to close anymore. Steven Adams is going to be the most dominant interior player in this series, and he has to show it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Does this matchup mean that Adams actually could be played less? Could Nerlens Noel play more because of this reason?
Or could Markieff Morris play more?
Well, either one. Yeah. Because Noel sometimes gets in trouble when he has to go against a burly guy, a Jokic, a Nurkic, one of those Towns, somebody like that. But Zach Collins and Myers Leonard now, Nerlens Noel can match up there. And maybe you save, when you get in, Billy gets into his rotations, Adams gets on the floor when Kanter's out there. Because Kanter could bull Noel pretty good, but this actually might be a little bit of a respite for Steven Adams in terms of not having to go 34 minutes against some big time massive center who's really skilled.
Yeah.
And that would count on Nerlens Noel and Markieff Morris coming through with their end of the bargain. Yeah. These are two guys who we've seen kind of have up and down performances since the All-Star break. Nerlens Noel fouls a ton. Markieff Morris kind of lulls into some bad shots at times. And frankly, his defense just isn't very good. So if Enes Kanter and Zach Collins and Myers Leonard start going off on Markieff Morris and Nerlens Noel, that's going to put Billy Donovan in a precarious situation where he has to play Steven Adams even more. And granted, like Barry was talking about how, you can kind of make the minutes to where Adams matches up more with Kanter, but this should be an opportunity for Steven Adams to rest more. Barry's right. There's no reason why the Thunder shouldn't be able to try out a Markieff Morris or Nerlens Noel or even Patrick Patterson and be able to match up with Zach Collins and Myers Leonard. Those guys aren't massive threats in the interior, and this is an opportunity for the Thunder to do something really strong in the interior, and they've got to. They've got to take advantage of that and even get Steven Adams some confidence offensively too, because it's a guy who can exploit Enes Kanter in the lob game with Russell Westbrook. It's a guy who's going to be critical in them getting offensive rebounds to get second chance opportunities. I don't think the Thunder can rely on being able to hit a ton of three-pointers the way they have in their past few games. It's great that those guys are hitting shots, but their bread and butter is Steven Adams crashing the offensive glass, getting second chance opportunities, and that's going to be really important in this series, and even if they go on to the second round.
Can we agree on this? Just as you were talking, I was funneling it through my mind. I think the Thunder's got a better roster than the Blazers for this series. With Nurkic out,
with Nurkic out,
the Thunder's got a better roster. You'd want, maybe the one advantage is McCollum over Ferguson is the one edge for the. You're talking Lillard and Westbrook, two greats going at it, so that's a wash. But McCollum over Ferguson, and Ferguson's played well against McCollum. That's really the only big advantage for Portland in this series.
I would think the thing that the Thunder has to guard against is letting one of those maybe bench guys like a John Layman get going, because those guys can, if they get hot, they can hit threes and really start affecting the game. And we've seen it before. We've seen guys like Myers Leonard. We've seen guys, get hot and, career highs. So those are the things you need to guard against, because if they play them the way they've played them the 4 games in the regular season, I love their chances, even with the heartburn they'll cause, Eric.
Yeah, but look, and this is why people believe in the Thunder so much, is that, a lot of people say the Thunder's built for the playoffs. The Thunder's first 6, even with Nurkic, the Thunder's first 6 is probably better than Portland's first 6. They've just got to show it. I think you believe more in the Thunder's first 6 because of what you've seen from Dennis Schroeder and Terrence Ferguson over the past 2 weeks. If they come into this series playing poorly, I don't know necessarily how much you have so much faith in what they're going to do in the playoffs. But Dennis Schroeder and Terrence Ferguson seem to be playing better offensively at the right time. Jeremy Grant's been relatively steady the entire season. Paul George, his health is going to be a big factor. Russell Westbrook's playing some of the best basketball of his career. And Steven Adams' health is in question too. You look at the first 6 of the Thunder, that's what was keeping them down post All-Star break. It wasn't so much the reserves. The first 6 was just not getting out to good starts. They were shooting really poorly together, and now they're starting to kind of get some confidence offensively and play to their identity. So in terms of their first 6 guys, Schroeder and Ferguson kind of interchanging in the starting lineup, I think you do have to feel confident about those guys against Portland's starters.
Okay, before we pan back a little bit, let's talk about one more thing. Paul George's health is obviously an ongoing issue. Before we knew this was the matchup, when we're looking heavily at Golden State, when we're looking heavily at Denver, even the Rockets, I'm thinking in my head, Paul George has to not only be healthy, but he has to be off the charts good. He needs to recapture that MVP level we saw earlier this year. I'm not saying he doesn't need to be really good in this series. I think they need him to be solid, but where does Paul George fit into this equation for you guys? Because he sat out with shoulder soreness at Milwaukee. I'm guessing had they been facing a bigger challenge, he might have played, Barry, but how does Paul George factor into this in your mind?
I think the Thunder needs him to play well.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they need him to play at that incredible MVP level that he played for the first 3 months of the year. If the Thunders happens to survive the Blazers, well, to beat Denver, say, I think George would have to play at an elite level. To beat Houston or even compete with Golden State, PG's got to play at that MVP level. But if he just plays solid, I think that might be enough in this Portland series.
Eric, how do you see Paul George factoring in?
I agree with Barry to some extent, but I think like the deeper we get into the discussion about Thunder Blazers, we're like continuing to add excuses for the Thunder to not be their best in this series. It's like, we don't need Paul George to play at an MVP level. Yeah. Oh, Steven Adams doesn't have to play that many minutes. They got to win a series.
Yeah.
Like a series, and then they can worry about whatever else is after this, because this is 2 years in a row that they haven't gotten out of the first round. There's going to be a lot of people talking over the next 3 days about how the Thunder, even though they don't have home court, are going to be the favorite in this series. They cannot approach it that way. They do not have a track record of good history in Portland. They do not want it to get to a Game 7 in Portland where they have to go on the road and face a hostile crowd. Yes, they've had some regular season success this year, but prior to this season, Billy Donovan had never won a game in Portland as a head coach in his 3 years before this season. The Thunder cannot approach this series like they're the overwhelming favorite just because Nurkic is out.
Yeah.
They've got to approach this like this is their last shot, and then they can worry about a second round series. It's cliche, but it's one game at a time. And they got to approach every game like that's the game that's going to send them home, because we've seen this team and their inconsistencies too much over the course of the season and how they can play down to the competition. And this is a prime example of how they can do that if they start to believe over the next 3 days that they're a superior team to the Blazers.
Well, guys, we have seen the Thunder rally off 5 straight to finish the season, which, again, a week ago, pretty skeptical, I think, that they could do that. Are they playing better basketball? I know that Milwaukee game was funky because of the way Milwaukee played it, but Barry, that win against the Rockets, that was some good basketball. But 5 in a row, how do you come down on just how much better the Thunder might be playing at this point?
The Rockets game was a great sign. Beating sort of a limping Detroit, beating the Timberwolves on a Sunday in Minneapolis, beating the Lakers. Was that who they beat to start the winning streak? Not a big deal. But beating the Rockets when the Rockets were playing, they were fairly desperate. The Rockets needed that to get on the right side of the bracket away from Golden State, and the Rockets were all in. The Rockets came into that game 21-4 when their big boys are all healthy and playing, and they were all here in Oklahoma City, present and accounted for. And the Thunder stared them down and won it on George's shot at the buzzer. So, to me, that was a very good sign. I thought they played pretty well in Milwaukee without George. The Thunder has traditionally been a top-heavy franchise in terms of roster. One guy at the top makes a huge difference. Playing without Paul George, nothing easy about that for this team, which is sort of really thin at the wing. You lose Paul George, you're in scramble mode. They persevered in scramble mode. So I like the way they're playing going into the playoffs. It's not at the level they were back in January, early February when they won whatever it was, 16 out of 19, whatever it was. So but I like it better, much better than what we saw here down the stretch of the season.
Eric, where do you come down on this question of how much better the Thunder might be playing?
No, they're playing better, and I think a big key to it is Dennis Schroeder and Terrence Ferguson just making more shots. And if those guys are making more shots, that makes life easier on everybody involved. Paul George doesn't have to carry as much load on offense. We know he's not going to be the MVP level Paul George. That was kind of unsustainable throughout the entire course of the season. So guys like Dennis Schroeder and Terrence Ferguson have to step up. Jeremy Grant shooting the ball incredibly well from three-point range. Again, Russell Westbrook playing the best ball of his career. You still wait to see if the shot selection is going to come into play for him in the postseason and how he's going to deal with that, because these are going to be tight games where every possession is critical, and he has to value those possessions and still trust in those guys to make shots in those critical situations. So Dennis Schroeder and Terrence Ferguson getting their games together in the last couple weeks helps the Thunder exponentially. Then you add in a guy like Markieff Morris, who's starting to find his rhythm from three, and I think that gives the Thunder some momentum going into the postseason. And yeah, they're playing much better than they were, but frankly, their offense was 29th in the league post All-Star break before they got on this 5-game run, so it had to go up from there, and they responded.
Yeah, shooting is better, Barry. I mean, there's no doubt, and even though Milwaukee in that regular season finale, dared them to shoot, they still made some shots, and I think Dennis Schroeder getting back in the flow of things, I think that's significant. I know the defense is going to have to win this series. That's the way the Thunder has to win games. But to see Dennis Schroeder back in line, I thought that was a big part of feeling better about this team.
It is, but Schroeder worries me. Sometimes he thinks he's Ray Allen, and he's not Ray Allen. He's Isaiah Thomas. He needs to shoot 4-footers, not 24-footers. And sometimes last night he was great in Milwaukee, but does that mean he's going to jack from deep in Portland? I still want to see Schroeder get to those floaters and those layups and those things that he's so good at. But if he's going to shoot them, he better make them, and he was much better. Ferguson has been playing better. He slumped pretty mightily. He's playing better. His confidence, he seems to really go up and down on a confidence level, while Russell Westbrook never woke up a day in his life unconfident. Terrence Ferguson does. So he needs to sort of be riding the crest, and he is. That's a good sign. So I like the way they're playing, but there's going to be a game or two or four in this series where they're going to go 7 of 26 from three-point range. Can they win a game when they go 7 of 26? That's the key.
Well, this is sort of the paradox of the Thunder, too. Like, you say that you want Dennis Schroeder shooting the floater and some of the stuff that he's better at. The Thunder's not really good at anything in terms of offense. They don't shoot the three very well. They're not a good mid-range team. They're the worst team in the league in terms of shooting percentage in the paint, and they're middle range or they're below average in terms of scoring at the rim. So offensively at every level, they're not a great team. So that's why we always say that they've got to win defensively. And that's the problem that I have, or the concern I have with Dennis Schroeder, is that defensively teams are going to hunt him out in terms of switches, and they're going to try to exploit him in the pick and roll situations. That's why Russell Westbrook's got to bring his defensive game. He's got to be locked in. Terrence Ferguson, Billy Donovan's got to be able to say, look, Dennis Schroeder, we're going to have to pull you off in certain situations so we can ride with Terrence Ferguson because he's the better defensive option. And if Dennis Schroeder has an issue with coming off late in games for Terrence Ferguson, then that's something that Billy Donovan's just going to have to accept and be like, look, we need to go with the better defensive option here. And frankly, Terrence Ferguson's a better overall player because he's playing well offensively right now. So Dennis Schroeder has some issues when it comes to teams exploiting him defensively, and the Thunder has some issues overall because they haven't been exemplary in any aspect of offense this season, shooting at any level.
Let me ask you a question then about this Portland matchup. It seems like, again, that makes it a pretty good matchup for the Thunder because the Blazers don't have, a really electric backup point guard.
Yeah.
They got Seth Curry, who's a shooter, very good shooter. You got to get on him, but he's not a guy that's going to kill you off the dribble. So maybe Schroeder can get his minutes going straight up against the B team of Portland. Don't switch on screens, and maybe you survive it. And then when McCollum and Lillard are on the court, as you talked about, lots of Terrence Ferguson.
All right, guys, last thing before we tease to our roundtable, which will be in the Friday Oklahoman. We want to talk a little bit about that. But Russell Westbrook, Eric, you talked about him off the jump here, the fact that he's playing some of the best ball of his career or of the season, and as we look at this season, he's averaging a triple-double. Once again, third straight year that he's done that. He matches Magic with his 138th career triple-double. 181 is the record. Oscar Robertson has it. I mean, he has driven us nuts. He's driven us all nuts from time to time, and yet he's still a statistical marvel. I mean, those sorts of things are not taken lightly, obviously, in the annals of NBA history.
No, and when Jenny says driven us nuts, for me personally, it's the basketball. It doesn't have anything to do with the questions.
Right.
I want people to be very clear about that. It's all about the basketball. But yes, Russell Westbrook has been unbelievable this season. He continues to do these things that you tend to get desensitized to because he's doing it so regularly. And, he's right in this regard where he says that, in years we're going to look back at this and then it's going to hit us, him included, what's really being done here. 3 years in a row averaging a triple-double has never been done before. I don't know how it correlates to winning exactly, but what you cannot dispute is that the Thunder's been successful with Russell Westbrook playing this style, being the engine of their team. And some people might look at success as, winning the championship. Well, the Golden State Warriors have better shooters, they're more efficient players, and only one team can win the championship every year. The Thunder's been a playoff team even post Kevin Durant. They made the playoffs every year. That's with Russell Westbrook at the helm, and the Thunder can say that they've been more successful than half the teams in the league because of Russell Westbrook as their hub, and that's something that should be lauded and should be noted, that the Thunder has had success with Russell Westbrook being this guy who does a little bit of everything and does a little bit of everything really well. He's the best rebounding guard we've ever seen. He's electric in the open court. He's a guy who's relentless on offense. You'd like more from him defensively, but when he's defensively locked in, he can be a really solid defensive player. And he set up teammates at a rate this season that, frankly, he should probably be averaging more assists because they've gone through some wild lows in terms of shooting efficiency, particularly from the guys around him like Dennis Schroeder, Terrence Ferguson. So Westbrook's having an unbelievable year, and it's scary to think his stats could be even better if the Thunder had better shooters, more consistent shooters around him.
Yeah, and it's in a bit of a transition year, in terms of his role, and again, playing with a different sort of core, Barry. And the thing that sort of I'm struck by is how this has become the norm. Russell Westbrook averages a triple-double, and we say, yeah, okay. That's really become sort of expected almost out of this guy.
Yeah, and you know what? The triple-double has sort of taken on a life of its own to the point where, people have got to the point where we're saying, well, it's overrated. Now they've got to the point where it's underrated. He said he ought to get credit for it. What strikes me about Russ's game is this. This is the second straight year he's going to lead the league in assists. It's his fourth straight year of double-digit assists per game. This year, it's over. He led the league in assists by 2 full assists per game.
Wow.
Kyle Lowry's second in the league in assists, 8.7. Russ had 10.7 playing with a bad offense, as Eric has clearly explained. So he's not firing the ball out to a bunch of dead-eye shooters. So Russell Westbrook's floor game has developed in incredible ways. Now, he will drive you nuts on some of the things he does. I assume most NBA stars will drive you nuts in some ways if you watch them 82 games a year. So, you live with a lot of that. But his ball distribution is phenomenal. And even on a night like Game 82, Wednesday night, no Paul George, and you're thinking, maybe Russ is just going to take over this game and try to score 60. And sometimes you thought maybe he should. But instead, he has 7 shots. He had 3 at halftime, I think. He's going crazy, distributing the ball. Had 17 assists with Paul George not playing.
Yeah.
So,
kind of mentioned this on the podcast last night with Maddie Lee. I almost like it when the Thunder plays a zone, or when the Thunder plays against a zone team.
yeah, no kidding.
Because and it's not even that I like it because the Thunder has great shooters. because they don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just happen to break that zone. That happens with the zone sometimes. Sometimes you just get into a night where your shooters can't miss. They did that against Miami on the road. They did that last night against the Bucks. What I think it does is it forces the Thunder to move more off ball. It forces guys to think. It gets guys more engaged because it's not just a one-on-one game anymore when you're going against a zone. You're having everybody having to move around. And I like that Russell Westbrook can kind of get into the teeth of the zone and have other guys moving off of him. I think it gets more guys engaged when you're going up against a defense that's a little bit of a puzzle. And look, to me, it looks like Russell Westbrook enjoyed the puzzle last night. They get 40 assists, and he's flipping the ball all over the place to guys. Terrence Ferguson gets 5 assists. Raymond Felton gets 7. So you get a lot of guys that can handle the ball, a lot of guys distributing when you're going up against that defense you're not used to. And look, I think last night was kind of a testament to how good Russell Westbrook's been this year. When you see something like a zone, it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to settle for these 3-point shots. He didn't do that last night. He took 3 3-pointers, and he got a lot of other guys clean shots. He broke down the defense with his penetration. The backside was wide open all night. Westbrook knew that, and he was setting guys up. And he's been like that for the most part all season. We tend to harp on, when he takes a bad shot with 2 minutes to go or in a tight game, and that stuff's really important too. But you can't forget that Russell Westbrook's been pretty consistent in setting the table for guys all year.
All right, in Friday's Oklahoman and on News OK, we're going to have a staff roundtable where we answer some questions about this Thunder season, about the playoffs. 30 seconds, guys. One word to describe this Thunder season. That's my question that I'm teasing. Barry, what's your one word? And go.
Roller coaster. I've never seen a team play so.
Is that 2 words?
No, roller coaster, one word.
Oh, okay,
One word.
Hyphenated.
Not even. No hyphens.
Just the singular roller coaster. Yeah, just like.
You're
roller
taking
coaster.
up Barry's time.
Sorry.
Roller
Go, Barry.
coaster, one word.
Sorry.
Listen, I've never seen a team so low, so high, so low, so high. They've gone through 5 or 6 of these extended periods. Started the year with a 4-game losing streak, ending the year with a 5-game winning streak. We'll see if it continues.
Did you watch Oklahoma State football in the fall by any chance?
I did watch some OSU football. Yeah, they only played 13 games.
The roller coaster felt similar. Eric, what's your one word to describe this season?
Maddening. You watch this team and you see the highs and you know what they're capable of, and then you watch this team lose to a G League Grizzlies team. Sometimes the effort hasn't been there. Sometimes guys have been hurt. Sometimes the execution and the focus hasn't been there. You see guys missing free throws. That's something we haven't talked about. That's going to play a huge factor in this series. The Thunder simply doesn't focus on shooting free throws. So it's been maddening in that sense to watch a team that is clearly a better collective than last season's team, and certainly better than the year before that. They've only won 1 more game than they have the previous season, considering that you're getting you usually have better players on the team, more youth. So it's maddening. It's a little bit maddening to see a team play down to the competition the way they have this year, but I guess that's why they have the playoffs, so maybe they can play up to the competition now.
We'll see. All right, Thunder starts the playoffs on Sunday afternoon. It's a 2:30 tip out in Portland. These guys will be there, so be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.